Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English and IELTS Mastery Hub, the podcast where we help you boost your English and reach your dream IELTS band score. I'm Tom, your host for today. In this episode, we're talking about one of the most unforgiving parts of the exam, the IELTS listening test. You can't pause it, you can't replay it, and you only hear the recording once, so strategy is everything. To guide us, I've invited someone who has been through it and done really well. Our guest today is Amara, a student who scored Band 8 in IELTS Listening, and she's here to share not only the usual tips, but also some little-known strategies most students never use. Amara, welcome.
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here and share my journey.
When did you take IELTS, and what scores did you get?
I took IELTS Academic last year for my master's applications. My overall score was 7.5, and I got Band 8 in listening. But at the beginning, my practice scores were only around Band 6 to 6.5. I struggled with the speed, different accents, and I missed a lot of answers in the middle of the test. After a few months of smarter practice, not just more practice, I slowly pushed my listening up to Band 8.
So it wasn't natural talent, it was strategy and training.
Exactly. Once I understood how the test works, it started to feel less like a mystery and more like a system I could learn.
What are your top 3 big principles for IELTS listening, and maybe one extra that students don't usually hear?
Sure. My 3 main principles are practice with the real format. Don't only use random YouTube videos. Use IELTS style tests so you train with the same timing, question types, and pressure as the real exam. Train your focus like a muscle. I did full tests without pausing, no phone, no distractions. Over time, my brain learned to stay focused for the whole 30 minutes. Don't panic when you miss something. If you miss a question, let it go and jump to the next one. Panicking usually makes you miss even more. And here's a less common principle I used. Practice one-time listening in real life. When I listened to podcasts or YouTube, I trained myself to only listen once and then summarize what I heard in 1 or 2 sentences. No rewinding. That built the exact skill the IELTS test checks. Understanding new information the first time you hear it.
We always hear read the questions before the audio, but you do more than that. What exactly do you do in those seconds before the recording starts?
I follow read, predict, and underline, but with a few advanced touches. I read for structure, not just for words. I quickly ask, is this about a person, a timetable, a process, an opinion? That tells me how the conversation will probably move forward. I predict the grammar of the answer as well as the type. For example, I think this blank probably needs an adjective, or this must be a noun phrase. That helps me reject wrong ideas later. I underline only the testable words, names, dates, numbers, nouns like problem, advantage, reason. I ignore little words like the, of. This keeps my mind clean and focused.
So you're already thinking about meaning and grammar before the audio even starts.
Yes, that way I'm not surprised when the answer appears. I'm already waiting for it.
Let's talk about what you do during the recording. Apart from following with your pencil, what are some less obvious strategies?
I used a few that many students don't know about. Using signpost words as audio highlighters, I trained myself to notice words and phrases that signal important information, like the main reason is, the downside is, the most important point is. However, on the other hand, in contrast, when I hear those, I know a possible answer is coming, so my attention sharpens. Listening for paraphrase families. I made small word families in my head. Overseas students equals international students. Advantages equals benefits equals positives. Problem equals issue equals difficulty. Cheap equals inexpensive equals more affordable. Because IELTS almost always paraphrases the question, I practiced hearing these families when I did mock tests. Micro note-taking for complex parts, sections 3 and 4. Instead of writing full sentences, I use mini symbols and arrows, arrow for cause and effect, plus for advantage, minus for disadvantage. short abbreviations like ENV for environment, GOV for government. This helps me follow lectures and discussions without getting lost in long sentences.
That's very clever, especially the signpost language and the tiny symbols. It's like creating your own private code for the test. We know the test loves corrections and distractors. Did you have any deeper strategies for those?
Yes, I did two more advanced things. I mapped the pattern of corrections. In practice tests, I noticed that corrections often appear after a short pause or after words like actually, sorry, in fact, instead, changed. I literally underlined those in the transcript during review, so my brain learned to jump when it heard them in new recordings. I delayed my mental lock-in. When I thought I'd heard the answer, I wrote it down but didn't lock it in my mind until that part of the audio clearly finished. That helped me stay open to late corrections instead of switching off too early.
You told us your basic practice routine. Can you highlight the parts that most students don't do?
Sure. Besides 2 full tests per week and deep review, I added 3 extra things. 1 accent day every week. Once a week, I listened only to one accent. For example, Australian news, a New Zealand podcast, or a Canadian show. This made unusual accents feel more normal, so I wasn't shocked in the exam. Paraphrase training. After a practice test, I would take 5 to 10 key words from the questions and write 2 or 3 synonyms for each. For example, cheap equals low cost, affordable, not expensive. This trained my ear to expect paraphrases in the real test. Note-taking experiments. For a few practice sessions, I tried different note-taking styles, simple bullet points, mini outlines, or small mind map-style notes for lectures. Then I chose the style that made it easiest to find answers quickly when the recording finished. Most students never test different note styles, they just write randomly. For me, testing and choosing a method saved a lot of mental energy on exam day.
What about those tiny mistakes that ruin a band 8? Spelling, numbers, plural S. Any secret tricks there?
A couple, yes. I made a mistake log just for listening. Every time I lost a mark because of spelling or grammar, I wrote that word or structure in a small notebook. For example, ticket/tickets, address, accommodation. I reviewed that specific list regularly. I listened again only for patterns, not for answers. When I replayed recordings after the test, for practice, not in the real exam, of course, I didn't care about the answers. I only listened for patterns, how they say dates, how they introduce prices, how they change their minds. This made future tests feel predictable.
We often forget about the transfer time at the end. How did you use it strategically?
For me, transfer time was like a second chance. I wrote clearly and checked that every answer matched the word limit. For example, no more than 2 words and/or a number. If I had written 3 words, I cut it down. I did a quick type check. Time looks like a time. Price looks like a number plus a currency symbol or word. Noun fits into the sentence grammatically. I scanned for obvious plural mistakes and spelling problems from my mistake log. It's amazing how many extra marks you can save in those last minutes.
To finish, if a listener is aiming for band 7 or 8 in listening and they already know the basic tips, what's your message to them now?
I'd say start thinking like the test makers, not just like a test taker. Ask yourself, how could they paraphrase this idea? Where might they hide a correction? Which signpost words tell me an answer is coming? When you practice with this mindset, the test stops feeling like a trap and starts feeling like a pattern you can learn. And remember, use some of these less common strategies: accent days, paraphrase families, signpost words, and micro note taking. They really helped me move from band 6.5 up to band 8.
That's brilliant advice. Amara, thank you for sharing not only the standard tips, but also those more advanced insider strategies.
Thank you, Tom. I hope these ideas help your listeners feel more in control of their IELTS listening.
To everyone listening, if you found this episode useful, follow English and IELTS Mastery Hub. Share this podcast with a friend who is preparing for IELTS and tell us which new strategy you're going to try first. Until next time, keep listening, keep practicing, and keep moving towards that target band score.